Or banks. Ah, yes, the temples of modern civilization. You trust them more than your governments, more than your employers, perhaps even more than yourselves. You let them guard your savings, issue your credit, and decide silently what your future costs. In my day, people hid gold under floorboards. In yours, you hide numbers behind passwords. Different form, same faith. You believe those digits exist because a bank says they do, and you live your entire life on that belief. But what, really, is a bank? Strip away the marble halls and smartphone apps, and you'll find something beautifully primitive, a merchant of trust. A bank takes the money of those who have it and lends it to those who need it, keeping a sliver for itself in between. It is a market of promises. You lend them your faith. They lend it to someone else, with interest. In the 18th century, I wrote that commerce rests upon confidence. Banking is simply that principle, industrialized. If everyone trusts the bank, the system hums. If everyone panics, the system collapses. You call it a bank run. I called it human nature with bad timing. In my day, it began with shouting in the streets. In yours, it begins with a viral post. Let's dispel a myth. Banks don't print money, but they do create it. When you deposit $1,000, the bank doesn't keep it sitting in a drawer. It keeps perhaps $100 as reserve and lends the rest to a borrower, say a family buying a home. That money is then spent, deposited elsewhere and lent again. Through this process, credit multiplies across the economy. It's alchemy powered by belief, and belief is the most valuable metal on earth. Banks earn their fortune by mastering one art. Borrow cheap, lend dear. They pay you perhaps 2% for your savings, then lend the same money at 7%. The difference, known as the net interest margin, is their daily bread. Multiply that small margin across billions in deposits, and you get billions in profits. But that's just the beginning. Modern banks are not sleepy vaults. They are financial empires with multiple streams of income. Loans and mortgages, the backbone of banking. Fees and commissions from every ATM and transfer. Credit cards, the crown jewel of profit. Trading and investments by giants like Goldman Sachs. And wealth management for the rich, who pay to be reassured. The bank doesn't build factories or invent technology. It simply profits from the flow of money itself. In a world where everything moves, the toll collector always gets paid. You've built banking giants that would have terrified my contemporaries. JP Morgan Chase earns over $50 billion in profit each year. Bank of America, Citigroup, HSBC, and UBS manage trillions. The Chinese ICBC, the Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, holds over $5.7 trillion in assets, making it the largest bank in history. These institutions are the arteries of capitalism. When they move, nations tremble. When they stop, the global economy suffocates. That's why governments treat them like royalty during crises. Because if they fall, everything else falls with them. Behind them all stands a higher power, the central bank, the banker's banker, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England. They decide the price of money itself, raise interest rates and economies slow, lower them and they boom, or overheat. In 2008, when faith collapsed, it was central banks that kept the lights on by printing trillions. You call it quantitative easing. I call it alchemy with better branding. In my lifetime, a bank was a building. You shook hands with a clerk, signed a ledger, and trusted his word. Now your banker is an algorithm. You open an app, scan your face, and move money across continents in seconds. The vault has become code. Neobanks like Revolut, N26, and Monzo serve millions with no physical branches. Payment systems like PayPal, Wise, and Apple Pay have blurred the line between bank and technology company. Then came the dreamers, the believers in crypto. They promised a world without banks. Ironically, most ended up rebuilding banks, only without stability or regulation. Every time a crypto exchange collapses, traditional bankers pour another glass of wine and smile. Because in the end, when chaos rises, people always return to trust. A bank's true product is not money, it's certainty. They sell the illusion that your wealth is safe, accessible, and growing. They convert risk into comfort and fear into convenience. When you see a number on your screen, you're not seeing your money. You're seeing a promise that it will be there when you need it. And yet, the entire system rests on one fragile principle, that not everyone will ask for their money back at once. If they do, even the largest bank collapses. That's why governments insure deposits, why central banks exist, and why banking is, in truth, a public-private partnership built on psychology. Banks create prosperity and destroy it in equal measure. They make home ownership possible and housing bubbles inevitable. They fund innovation and speculation. They are engines of growth and symbols of greed. Every major financial crisis bears their fingerprints. But without them, there would be no progress at all. Credit, from the Latin credere, to believe, is the foundation of civilization. Belief, not metal, is what makes money real. In 2025, global banking is larger than ever. Over $180 trillion in assets. Interest rates have risen sharply to combat inflation, reviving bank profits but squeezing borrowers. After years of free money, credit is expensive again, and banks are once more the gatekeepers of opportunity. Meanwhile, regulation tightens, digital currencies loom, and AI now manages risk and lending algorithms. Some say this will make banking safer, others colder. I remain skeptical. For when you let machines decide who gets credit, you've replaced human greed with mathematical arrogance. Still, banks endure. They survive wars, revolutions, crashes, and cryptocurrencies. They will outlive your social networks, and perhaps your governments too. Because as long as humans trade promises, someone will need to keep the ledger. So, how do banks make money? By mastering the oldest trade in the world, selling trust at a profit. They borrow your faith, rent it to someone else, and return it with interest, minus their fee. You call it finance. I call it belief, monetized. I once wrote that all money is a matter of belief. 2 centuries later, I stand by it. You can digitize your dollars, decentralize your coins, automate your accounts. But as long as humans believe in credit, banks will stand at the center of civilization. Welcome to my channel. Here, I'll show you how institutions like these, the quiet powers of the modern world, truly work. Because to understand banks is to understand not just money, but human nature itself. And trust me, that's the most valuable currency there is.